Plastic becomes the focus on World Environmental Day today.
The spotlight falls on the much-loved holiday destination islands as key contributors to the crisis. A 2015 report published by the Ocean Conservancy suggests that Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam are some of the top plastic waste producers given their rapidly growing economies.
Thailand is aware that there is a problem, but there is no action plan in place to address the issue. The Bangkok Metropolitan Administration said last month that 10 million residents used around 80 million plastic bags per day, averaging 8 bags a day for one person. Last week, Thailand Marine and Coastal Resources Department announced that a pilot whale had died after ingesting 80 plastic bags. The autopsy revealed that around 8 kilograms of plastic was removed from its stomach. Vietnam is the fourth largest contributor to marine plastic pollution globally. Just south of the capital Hanoi, what was once a beautiful beach is now decorated in plastic litter due to many fishermen who use plastic packets for their day-to-day work. In Africa, recycling waste is some refugees' only option to put food on the table. Somali refugees in Kenya gather empty plastic water bottles, broken buckets and old jerry cans around one of the world's largest refugee camps. A 2015 Red Cross study said that 270,000 jerry cans were discarded each year. There is no accurate data on the amount of plastic waste produced in Dadaab, but aid workers estimate hundreds of thousands of tons are generated annually.
All right, so it is World Environmental Day. The UN says by 2050 there could be more plastic in the sea than fish. Already it says the oceans have reached a stage where microplastics outnumber stars in the galaxy. And those are, of course, the very concerning pieces smaller than 5 millimeters, sometimes coming from cosmetics and toothpaste. The UN Environmental Programme has made the theme for this year Beat Plastic Pollution. Meanwhile, Greenpeace Africa has launched VUMA.EARTH, which is an online campaign platform to allow ordinary citizens, it says, to run environmental petitions. Let's discuss now. We're joined by Greenpeace Africa campaigner Nhlanhla Sibisi. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Francis.
So Mr. Sibisi, let's start with plastic. We hear about whales dying from eating plastic. Just how serious is the situation?
It's very concerning and it's very serious. It's as some of your graphics has actually shown, that we do have a serious problem when it comes to plastic pollution, and especially on our landfill sites as well as in the oceans. So it's not only in the oceans, but it's also in the streams that we have in our country. So the problem is really dire because it does affect the environment. In the case of oceans, it's definitely affecting the marine life, and we see those examples happening throughout the world. There are different countries that are having whales, dolphins that are washing up onto their beaches, and when they actually dissect them, they find that there's a lot of plastic that they've ingested. And the unfortunate part is that there's this cycle that we are also involved in. We are the polluters, but also we end up eating the plastics, and this is how it happens because what happens is that all this plastics that goes into the ocean, and as you mentioned, those particles, those small particles get ingested by the fish that we eat, which is why we're actually calling for this awareness, and we're using our online platform, which is VUMA.EARTH, to actually say to the citizens that they also have an opportunity to voice their displeasure.
Right now, so the UN is saying by 2050 more plastic than fish. That means mountains of plastic under the sea. These fish that die, is it 1 in a million, in 100,000? Do we have any sense of how destructive it is and when it will become harmful to humans, like you say?
Well, because we ingest the very fish that's been affected by this. So to a certain degree,
we're eating plastic at the moment?
In a way, we are eating plastic, but we haven't yet seen any evidence as such to say that we are affected as the fish is affected. But you can just use your imagination to actually get to a point of understanding that if we continuously are ingesting this plastic which we are getting out from the fish, it means that at some point in time it's going to affect us. But at the end of the day, it is a really dire thing that we as citizens of the world need to actually take moral obligation for and make sure that, our oceans don't get polluted. And we need to, to truly clean up, because as I mentioned earlier on, our beaches are just a very good example where we see these things actually ending up. And what happens is that even during the cleanups that are, done by different people, including our volunteers in Durban, they've actually shown the effects, not only to the marine life, but also, to the beauty of the beaches. So there's so much disregard, not only from our side, but also, from the side of, in terms of our normal behavior. And we truly need to change that, and which is why we're creating this awareness as Greenpeace Africa, to say that not only using the World Environment Day, but also on a continuous basis, to say that we have an opportunity of getting rid of this waste which is created by us.
Okay, so let's look at what people can do, but first we're going to bring up a graphic which looks at how long it takes for plastic to decompose, and that's the problem, isn't it? That it just doesn't go away on its own.
That's true. It takes quite a very long time because of the type of material that plastics are made from, and we see that lasting over a couple of thousand of years, actually, depending on the type of plastic and the product that it's made from.
Okay, so there you see plastic cups, for example, 50 years. So firstly, let's look at these microparticles that are apparently very difficult because you can't scoop them up and deal with them easily. Why is that not illegal for people making exfoliators, for example, putting it in toothpaste?
Definitely, and this is why...
Does that involve a world consensus, I guess?
Yes, it definitely does, because at least as we know through the UN, there are these forums where governments are represented, and they have an opportunity of actually addressing it. But also from a country perspective, which is why through our awareness programs, we're actually highlighting to government that they need to come up with the right legislation that will ensure that there's a ban on these kind of items that we are seeing polluting the oceans. So governments have a responsibility in terms of putting the right legislation, and as you rightfully say, in some countries we see examples. For instance, in Kenya, they've now banned the use of carry bags, the plastic carry bags. So that's a very good example. That's a good sign that they are going in the right direction at some point in time. We also need to start now rethinking of the tariff that we've imposed on our own plastics bags, and if it's not working, we need to change that. We need to find a way in which we introduce biodegradable plastic, and that's an opportunity that can actually be brought about by the state.
A lot of the retailers, I think, are recycling plastic, so the pressure is there at least to not use it once and then throw it away.
Well, you say a lot. It's actually, if you look at the stats, unfortunately, internationally, these are global stats where only just over 9% of plastics actually get recycled. And just above 90% actually is what ends up in our landfill sites, it ends up in our oceans, and it just pollutes the entire environment. So which is why we'd like to see a change in terms of policies that that are governing that, and we need to see that happening.
What do you do as an individual? And I guess it's one of these things, does one vote count if there's an election? Does one person's behavior count? What would you tell people?
One person's behavior does count because it has an accumulative effect. So the way that we are saying as Greenpeace Africa is to say that as an individual you have a responsibility. For instance, if you go to your retailers, to your supermarket, which is why we are running the petitions that we are running on our website, which is VUMA.EARTH, we're actually saying to individuals that you don't really have to take a plastic bag from your from your supermarket when you're buying your groceries. You can have your own alternatives, and your own alternatives can come in durable bags. So keep a durable bag in your car, keep a durable bag in your handbag if you can, because we do have durable bags that that you can fold. Yeah. So that's a responsibility that as an individual you need to sit and think about it. When you go to your restaurants and you want to take away the food that you've been eating but you didn't finish, and they offer you plastic cutlery or they offer you plastic straws, you have an opportunity to say to them that why don't you find an alternative that is biodegradable? Why don't you find an alternative that is more friendly to the environment? So as an individuals, which is what we are appealing to as Greenpeace Africa, is to say that we all have a responsibility. Yes, we can hold government accountable for the right legislation that they impose on us, or impose, so that we can, change our behavior. But the behavior starts with us, and which is why we are offering to our volunteers, our supporters, and the broader public to actually use that platform and say that enough is enough and we can do something about it.
Well, let's end it there. So VUMA.EARTH, you go there and you can set up a petition. So it could be anything in your community. Just explain exactly what the end goal is.
Well, the end goal is to definitely create the awareness. So we are affording people the platform, because our volunteers, for instance, in Durban, are using it very effectively. They've petitioned WIMBI, they've petitioned Ocean Basket, and I'm glad to say that that petition has actually had some effect, because we had an opportunity to meet with Ocean Basket, and
so
that's part of the
management
push.
Gets a thing with all these signed names that was done online saying we don't like what you're doing.
Exactly, but at the end of the day, what we are saying is that we have an opportunity to voice ourselves, which is why we created this platform, not only for the awareness purpose, but also for each and every individual to have their voice, and people can actually utilize it, because we're hoping to get positive results from your other retailers, as we are seeing from Ocean Basket. They're paying attention, and we like that, and we'd like the other retailers as well to pay attention. Your restaurants, including the others that I did not mention, they have an opportunity to now start thinking about the plastic straws that they are giving to their customers, your plastic cutlery, your carry bags, etc., even the foams that they're giving, that they need to now look at alternatives. And they also, as retailers, we're very much cognizant of the fact that they get it from the manufacturers. They have an opportunity as retailers to put pressure on the manufacturers and say that, listen, try and find alternatives which are friendly to the environment, because we are killing the environment at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like warming. It sounds like there's an end date and we have to move soon. Thank you very much from Greenpeace, Nhlanhla Sibisi. And yeah, you can go online and start your own petition if you're mad about what a retailer